Hello everyone, Stakuya here, and welcome back to the History of Everything podcast YouTube channel. In our last video, it was overwhelmingly seen in the comments that you wanted a continuation of the North Korean famine. We did cover these stupid events that led up to it, but not necessarily the details of the famine itself. Which if you have not seen that video, then please do check it out here. But for those of you who are not going to click the link, please allow me to give a little bit of a recap. Over the course of the mid-1990s, potentially millions of people died in North Korea due to famine. This was immediately caused as a result of flooding that had destroyed large percentages of North Korea's arable land. Now, this land was already suffering due to overuse, as well as dependence on fertilizer, as well as irrigation systems that ran on oil that the country simply did not have. And so, in an effort to add more farmland, widespread deforestation occurred, which weakened the land further, so that once the flooding actually hit, it devastated the country that had no barrier to protect it. And thus, in 1995, famine struck. But mind you, even once famine had hit the country and was in full swing, people really didn't know what was happening, because the government told them that they were essentially in paradise. They, after all, controlled all media. Don't believe anyone telling you that there's a famine. No, those are just the words of the angry Western imperialists. Every newspaper, every TV broadcast, anything you could possibly get information from, it just told the same story. Nothing is wrong, everything is normal, please continue. North Koreans really had no way to call or write letters to anyone beyond their borders. Their phone system was and still is closed to the outside world. And as the country's economy crashed and people began to die from hunger, they weren't allowed to complain to the officials. Leadership would just completely ignore them. Even as the country wasted away, Supreme Leader Kim Jong-il would just hold pizza parties. He was also Hennessy's #1 customer and invited pro wrestlers to entertain him as well as his loyal generals. No one actually knew what was going on until the government finally said something. You see, the government of North Korea strictly controlled the distribution of all food, doling out rations to city dwellers and people in the military. Farmers would be given a share of their own crop instead, and rations were determined not by need, but rather by political power. Elites and those who were loyal to the government would be given more food than the elderly, children, and others. This then sent the government into a panic, and so they did something that no one ever expected. They asked for help. In September of 1995, North Korea's diplomatic representatives made a stunning appeal to the World Food Program, or WFP, for help. Now, of course, this was the government that was doing it. The actual people of North Korea, who were isolated and uninformed, had no idea that this was happening. But for the international neighbors of North Korea, this was very startling. Much like what you would see today, the Democratic People's Republic of North Korea of the 90s would constantly boast about its military and economic prowess. And also, much like today, analysts would be skeptical of any claims that the country would make on a regular basis. But of course, they had no idea just how bad things were in the nation's governance. The fact that North Korea at this time was now calling for help, this was a massive shock to the leaders of the world. This was completely unheard of, and more importantly, the fact that this was happening meant that North Korea actually was in a very bad position. It became very quickly apparent that if no one stepped in, this was going to be a disaster. It was much worse than the deficit that was reported for the famine in Ethiopia. Now, the nation of North Korea had been struggling for decades to feed its own people. But it was only after realizing that half of the country's population was going hungry and not having a single meal over the course of a day that they realized that this was actually bad. Bad enough to actually require outside help. Now, of course, at first, the outside countries that were asked for help hesitated at first. The isolated state of North Korea had never done anything like this before. Eventually, the countries would provide the requested aid, but unfortunately, the majority of this would be stolen by the country's elite, who would rather distribute the food amongst themselves than actually redistribute it amongst the people. So farmers would steal their own crops, the elite would steal the aid, and every other impoverished Korean would starve. Now, the great irony of that famine was that tons of not stolen food aid was sitting in the warehouses of Pyongyang. North Korea's distribution system just simply did not incentivize its food distributors to actually make deliveries. The people who were responsible for delivering said food were paid regardless of whether or not they delivered the food. So many just didn't do anything. But there was also a very real danger for those that were delivering the food. By the time the famine was in full force, it was a threat to the life of the deliverer if a truckload of food came into a starving village. It wasn't very uncommon for riots to start, and there was a very real chance that for these people, that they were going to lose their lives just for trying to deliver the food as they were told to do so. And as time went on, this only got worse. As rations trickled in and then eventually dried up, North Korean officials and citizens were frantic in their search for food. The government then started a campaign called Let's Eat 2 Meals a Day, and began an informative public service announcement regarding which grasses were good to eat and which edible tree bark was most appropriate for their diet. In addition to eating bark and grass, refugees reported eating rats, pets, and a few even reported witnessing cannibalism. Several refugees reported that they were rationed exactly 24 kernels of corn a day while being forced to perform harsh physical labor. Thousands would try to flee across the border into northern China. Some of these people would make it, but some would not. And among those who didn't make it, no one really knows how many North Koreans actually died over the course of the famine. I mean, after all, North Korea has never exactly been one to publish its own statistics with any degree of accuracy, and they will not allow any outside inspectors to come in and give a good, thorough search. And so because of that, experts can only estimate that anywhere between 250,000 and 3.5 million people died over the course of the famine. There really is no way to be sure. In North Korea, the famine has a state-sanctioned name, that being the Arduous March. While the phrase demonstrates the experiences of those who suffered through it, it does nothing to acknowledge the role that officials played in creating it in the first place. Even to today, North Korea's dictatorship continues to blame the catastrophe on outside forces, whether that being natural weather or outside imperialist forces that want to bring down the state of Great Korea. But that is the end of today's story. I know that this one was a little bit longer than what I normally do, but I really wanted to cover as much as I possibly could without, unfortunately, then saying too many things that could cause this to be an issue within YouTube guidelines. And to help this video, because it very well could possibly face an issue, I would really appreciate it if you would give a like, comment, if you could subscribe, do anything you can to help this video in the algorithm. I appreciate all of you for watching, and please let me know down in the comment section below what it is that you would like to do next. I appreciate all of you, and thank you. Have a good rest of your day.